Are you looking for a memorable getaway for your family that's packed with adventure? Look no further than Lake Erie. Powder Hook, in partnership with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, has all the resources you need to plan your adventure to the walleye capital of the world. The best part is, you don't have to be an experienced angler or own a boat to have a fantastic time on the water. While walleye are the main attraction, Lake Erie also offers excellent fishing for yellow perch, trout, steelhead, salmon, and bass. The options are endless, and there's so much to explore on Lake Erie. Knowledgeable and friendly fishing guides are eager to serve you. Whether you want to hire a charter, secure a seat on a headboat, fish from the shore, ice fish, or do a DIY trip on your own boat, all these options are at your disposal with a bit of planning and preparation. Find everything you need at powderhook.com. That's powderhook.com. We know what's biting and can help you enjoy a wonderful fishing experience on Lake Erie.
This episode is brought to you in part by Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Green Chef is now offering 60% off and free shipping to listeners of the Waypoint Podcast Network by going to greenchef.com/waypoint60 and using the code waypoint60 at checkout. With Green Chef, meal prep is no longer boring. With pre-portioned and prepped ingredients, including pre-measured sauces, spices, and dressings, my time spent meal prepping is now cut in half. Flavorful recipes feature premium proteins, seasonal organic produce, and sustainably sourced seafood with a variety of dietary preferences like keto, fast and fit, and gluten-free. Green Chef now offers 10-minute lunches. Each week's menu includes 2 convenient, low-prep, and nutritious lunch recipes ready in just 10 minutes. No cooking required. Perfect for when you're pressed for time at work, getting ready for a fishing or hunting trip, or on the road. Go to greenchef.com/waypoint60 and use the code waypoint60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. That's greenchef.com/waypoint60, promo code waypoint60 for 60% off plus free shipping.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Western Hunting Hub podcast. And if you end up going to Colorado this year to do some hunting and you decide to pick up a 6.5 Creedmoor, make sure you are not using any match grade ammo. That's one thing that I keep picking up on various people that are using, and it's dumb. Those bullets don't break up. The bullets break up. They don't hold together and create any kind of damage. I know that's a random little piece of information, but seen it multiple times, and it's just not a smart thing to do. Not a fan of the 6.5 caliber, so get after me for whatever reason there, but I'm not into flavors of the month and various trendy things. I'm going to stick with those calibers that have been around for a long, long time and have proven to be working. So anyway, this episode is with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and if you are hunting in Colorado, this is an episode you need to listen to. April 4th, I believe, is the deadline for the big game draw, and it has some really good information to help you understand the new allocation process as a non-resident and just understand what your odds are for different things. So time to do some homework. We're getting close to that draw date, and I'm kind of crunching numbers right now trying to figure this out, but I learned a few things from this episode and was happy to have on 2 guests from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. So thanks and enjoy. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Western Hunting Hub podcast, and I have on Danielle and Joey from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. If you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself real quick. Let's go with Danielle first. I was going to say I didn't even ask clarification on how to pronounce your last name. I want to say Eisenhart. How did I do?
That's correct. Thank you,
Clint. Yeah, so if you could introduce yourself, say what you do for CPW, and then also just why you enjoy working for Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Sure. So yes, Danielle Eisenhart. I am the licensed reservation and customer operations section manager for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I know that's a mouthful, but basically I manage our section that is in charge of our limited license draws, our call center, our camping and hunting reservations, the license suspensions, and all of our agents that sell our park passes and licenses across the state. So basically, if you interact with CPW, you likely interact with something that I'm responsible for. And I think that's one of the reasons I love working for CPW and then in my current role is just that I get to hopefully make everyone's interactions with our agency better. And also the revenue that comes in through all those processes helps fund our wildlife management and other things for our agency. So definitely feel like my job is impactful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the second part, what do you enjoy the most about working for CPW?
I think it is just that I know that my work is impactful and is a service to our customers. So
sure.
That I get to play a role in, policy and impacting some of those important customer face-to-face interactions. And then ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to work with wildlife. So I'm not really working with wildlife directly anymore. But I know that my work still helps benefit the resource.
Yeah, because as I have a 4-year-old and he's so addicted to wildlife, and my 1-year-old is just so addicted to taxidermy, just looks at it, likes it, like a lot of kids. And you think, man, they all want to probably grow up and work with animals. How many kids do you hear that in elementary school? I want to work with animals. I want to work with animals. But adults probably don't always understand exactly what you do from your title. So a little kid being able to comprehend, there's other things you can do besides being a vet or a biologist. There's multiple things. So very, very interesting. I'm going to be curious to see where my kids go with their desire for animals. You never know. But
very cool. My daughter's the same way. She's 6 and she wants to save endangered animals. That's her goal right now in life.
Well, there you go. That's great. And Mr. Joey Livingston, could you introduce yourself with the same questions?
Yeah, so I'm Joey Livingston. I'm a statewide public information officer with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I started with CPW back in 2016 at a state park doing boat inspections. And then I worked at the Southeast Region office in Colorado Springs, one of our wildlife offices here in Colorado, and spent about 5 years working directly with the public, helping them apply for the draw, answering hunting regulations questions, fishing regulations questions, and recently was promoted to statewide public information officer. And second part of that question, I think what I really enjoy is having that interaction with people, and all that time I spent helping people understand our hunting regulations and the process. I just really liked seeing kind of the gears turn in people's head as you made them understand this hunting regulations in Colorado can be a bit complicated, but there's usually a method to the madness, and just being able to communicate that and see people gain that understanding has been very rewarding for me.
Yeah, I enjoy digging into multiple states just to see and apply, obviously, to hunt and recreate in those different states. But living in Colorado forced me to figure it out. And I would say learning a little bit more about Wyoming and Montana, I had this discussion yesterday with a hunting buddy that, man, Montana's confusing, Wyoming's not too bad. Colorado is not too horrible. Once you dive into it, you can really understand it. I think everything's pretty comprehensive in the handbook. And not like some states where it's lawyer speak in the regulation piece. I think it's pretty doable in understanding what you can and cannot do and what opportunities are available if you just put in that time. So thanks again for setting this interview up, and let's dive into some of this stuff. It's application season right now across much of the West and the whole U.S. and Colorado's application season is open. I've got my handbook right here in front of me, due April 4th for the primary draw. I think I know what I'm going to do, but just a couple of things that made me think I need to ask some questions. And one of these are what's new. And that has to do with some tag allocation, some changes over what non-residents receive versus residents. And this is such a contentious thing across the West of we let too many non-residents have the tags. You need to allow residents, and it's just a battle between hunters and agencies and conservation groups saying what is the right allocation. So we're not going to make everyone happy, but what are some of those changes that have gone into place over the last year?
Sure. So up until November of last year, Colorado Parks and Wildlife had the same kind of residency allocation rules in place for over a decade. Previously, the regulation was that we were allocating 65% to our residents and 35% to non-residents for most of our deer and elk license hunt codes. The exception were those hunt codes that took 6 or more resident preference points to draw, using a frozen 3-year average from 2007, 8, and 9. And those hunt codes that took those 6 or more resident preference points were referred to as our high demand hunt codes. And for those, we were allocating 80% to residents and 20% to non-residents. So back in November of last year, our commission wanted to kind of update those regulations. And so the first update they made is just updating that 3-year average that was frozen from 7, 8, and 9 and updating that to a rolling 3-year average with a 1-year lag. So that means for starting this year, the 2023 draw year, we'll be using 2019, 2020, and 2021 draw results to kind of figure out what our high demand and hybrid draw hunt codes are. They also updated those same 3 years for our hybrid draw. And they also added bear and pronghorn to the species that those allocation rules apply to.
Okay, so that's a mouthful. Let's just break that down. I know you know this inside and out, but the 3-year average used to be you going off of old data for that percentage of allocation. And I've had people reach out to me with a, look at this, this is ridiculous. We're using old data, and now it's updated data. So 2019 to 2021 are the 3-year average that you guys are using to determine those percentages, correct?
Yeah, to determine the preference points.
Oh, right. Yeah,
correct.
Sure. So whatever preference points it took, the average in those years, that's determining if it's at that point to be 80-20 or 65-35, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
yep.
Cool. So that's how it was.
So we just updated the years, so that's what we're going to be using for 2023. And then at our commission meeting just this week, we discussed possible other changes, future changes to allocation. And so staff's recommendation at that meeting was a 75-25 across the board for deer, elk, bear, and pronghorn. So 75% to residents, 25% to non-residents, with no kind of split between high demand and low demand hunt codes. So just 75-25 across the board. And the commission did voice support for that, recommendation, but it has not been finalized in rule yet. So that will be up for final consideration in May. And the earliest that would come into play would be our 2024 draws. So for 2023, we're still going to have the 80-20 and 65-35, but just updating those 3 years that are used to determine the average.
Okay. So the 65-35, 80-20 didn't change in the last few years. It was just the 3-year rolling. I know you mentioned. Okay, good. I'm just wrapping my head around it. And then it just was the 3 year. So then now they're looking at a 75-25. Why? What's the determination on that?
Well, as I said, it took over a decade to even kind of update those years because this is such a kind of political and contentious topic.
Sure.
But even after that November change, which was something, I think it spoke volumes that it took that long to even make a simple change as updating the years. We still were hearing from a lot of residents through different public engagement processes that we still didn't go far enough. We heard a lot of residents continue to advocate for the higher allocation, like an 80-20 or even a 90-10 like we do for sheep, goat, and moose. And so our commission asked us to continue working on this allocation topic. And so we launched like a public comment form on one of our sites, Engage CPW, and we collected comments for close to 4 weeks and received almost 3,000 comment form responses on the topic. It helped us inform that 75-25 recommendation that we brought forward.
That's really interesting. Now that I understand this and I'm up to date now on what the commission's working on now. One thing we've done a similar thing here in South Dakota of capping our over the counter. It's not over the counter, but our unlimited archery we have for deer and antelope, and that recently has got some big changes, and it's restricting non-residents quite a bit, but in the interest that non-residents can have a better experience while they're here. So by updating that average, you've got maybe that 3-year average. You now have a more accurate number, so that makes sense. And as a hunter, yay, thumbs up. I can get on board with that. And then I know one of the arguments was 35% for non-residents. That's a lot. No other state really, that's what I hear. No other state really does that. That's a lot that you're allocating. So by getting rid of that and going a 75-25, meeting in the middle and giving, if it's those, and I was just looking at my preference points today. I got 6 for elk, and I'm thinking for the next 3 to 5 years, what does that mean? Where am I trying to shoot for? And that 25% is probably what I'd be aiming for then. And hey, that helps me out. Another 5% chance or 5% numbers of tags for those. That's a bonus, I guess. So maybe thumbs up for me on that one too, just to continue to work for the hunter and non-resident or resident. So that's interesting. And I wonder, it'll be fun to watch where all that plays out.
Yeah, we thought it was a good approach from what we were hearing from residents, because they'll get, of course, 10% more of those previous 65-35 hunt code licenses, but it also, as you mentioned, gives 5% more of those high demand licenses to non-residents. So it really was kind of a compromise approach that kind of benefits both, but still caters mostly to our residents.
And this is an off the cuff question, but how does that compare to a couple of the other western states around for opportunity for non-resident?
I can pull up a spreadsheet that I have. I think, we're probably one of the most generous as far as giving tags to non-residents.
Yeah, I would kind of assume that. Just digging into Montana a little bit, just even a general tag is, I got a 54% chance as of last year's data to draw just a general tag. Just to go do anything, I don't have an opportunity, but I already have a Colorado hunt planned to go do over the counter. Like, I know I can already go. So that's not even including the that's outside of the draw related stuff. So opportunity wise, yeah, I know Colorado for sure has definitely some amazing opportunities for non-residents. It's always been one of those targeted states for non-residents to come and buy their counter or over the counter tag, and away they go. But anyway, yeah, let you pull up that spreadsheet, see what you find.
So this is a kind of all encompassing, but like I know for Idaho, they're around 10% for most of their species. Nevada's 10%. I think Arizona is also 10% for most, except for bear and javelina. New Mexico, not taking into their count their outfitter kind of allocation, but they're around 84% that go to their residents, 10% non-residents. So again, most states are between like 5 and 10%, whereas we're, aiming for 25, but right now, about 20 to 35%.
Yeah. Has some of those comments been made by the public due to overcrowding? Has that kind of been a piece of it, or is it been more I can't get a tag?
So We've definitely been hearing about overcrowding in some of the over-the-counter units. I'm sure we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later here. But as far as allocation, we do just kind of hear complaints that from residents that Colorado's a fallback state, that if someone doesn't draw their tag in another Western state, they come to Colorado, and that doesn't sit well for a lot of residents. So we're trying to find a good balance. You know, we want to be a destination state for non-residents, but we also want to make sure our residents feel like they're being heard.
Yeah, no, I get it. I was a resident for just 9 years and a non-resident for 20 some odd years. So I can see a little bit of both. The locals there wouldn't call me a resident for just being there 9 years, but I pay my taxes there. So, I like to sit in the middle and just watch and listen and hear the ideas. So that's kind of interesting. Well, that's a good transition into this over-the-counter stuff. I've got my brochure here, and looking at, let's go with just the over-the-counter archery elk, and maybe that's different for, yes, it is different for the second and third seasons. Second and third seasons still have quite a bit of the over-the-counter opportunity, but once you get to archery, there is, besides the front range, I mean, we've got all kinds of opportunity front range for over-the-counter archery elk, but not many elk out in the prairie compared to out or up in on the Roan Plateau or the Mesa or wherever. But there is units, it seems like, dropping left and right every year for that archery season, and we just lost for 6 units over this year. The Grand Mesa from 41 to 42, 521, and that whole surrounding area. So that whole thing is now off the map for over the counter, except for private land only. And obviously that's a piece to it, but we're thinking most guys like me are going to show up. We don't have permission to go hunt private land. So less units. And then I guess down in the Southwest, we saw another unit or two, I think in the last year or two that fell off the map as well for that. What are we seeing? What are the trends for this over the counter, and what's the outlook? Where do we think it's going?
Yeah, so we've been hearing complaints about crowding in over-the-counter units for a few years now, especially during the archery elk OTC season. So we actually started working on whether we want to limit any of these over-the-counter opportunities during our last big game season structure, so the 2020 through 2024 big game season structure. And we actually had made as staff some recommendations on setting some limitations, especially in the archery season during that time. But the commission that we had at that moment did not support full limitation. And so instead, what they adopted as a part of that season structure was basically allowing staff to come forward annually with allowing either sex and sex-specified archery elk licenses to be limited geographically to help meet biological or social management objectives. So bringing forward basically issue papers to close certain areas for those reasons. And that is kind of what spurred, those 2 DAUs you mentioned going limited for the archery season. So yes, we had E14, the Grand Mesa DAU that went limited for 2023. And then the San Luis Valley E32 went limited for 2022. So the problem is, of course, that when you limit certain areas, then you're pushing more pressure into the neighboring units, and they're just getting even more crowded. So our commission has kind of heard this from the public. They're seeing it, and they have kind of mentioned and supported staff considering some full limitations for over-the-counter archery elk as early as the 2024 hunting season. So for your listeners to keep an ear out for that as we go through this year. There'll be some commission presentations and more discussions about that to come.
Interesting. Make us as hunters have to choose maybe what we're applying for instead of just our easy, what I guess the complaints would be, a fallback state. to just I'll go there then instead of having to apply and plan a little bit more. I just, as a hunter going to one of those OTC units this year, I just am concerned about people's preparation for the unit or for the season and opening up the book once they get there, which is never a good idea, and seeing, oh, I've been hunting for 40 years and 421, and now I got to go somewhere else. Where are we going, guys? Well, now they go to 21 or 30, and off they're going to a totally different unit and fill in those trailheads. So that is a concern. That worries me a little bit for this year until those things come up and the commission and decisions are made to further restrict or not. So, that'll be interesting.
I think the other component is just all the other recreational pressure that those public lands have, specifically in those earlier seasons, from hikers, bikers, etc. That's also adding to the crowding issues. And then we also have biological concerns with just our elk recruitment going down in the last few years, especially in the southern part of the state. So from a staff perspective, that's what we're trying to kind of address with talking about limitation.
Yeah, keeping the quality of the herd up and quality of the hunt, whether it's not necessarily antler size, but just quality of hunt of seeing animals and having a good number. So yeah, Southwest, I know herd, this is a good transition into the next thing. Southwest herd has struggled. I know the Southeast units, southeast of Glenwood Springs area, that herd has had some issues and struggles over the last year. What's some of the other herds' outlook? How's that Roan Plateau looking? How's some of those other big herds looking for health-wise and let's go elk?
Yeah, so, overall our elk herds are doing well across the state. 85% of those herds are at or above our population objectives, which is pretty high. And you have seen overall those numbers growing in the past few years. Back in 2017, there was about 280,000 estimated elk in the state, and we're currently at about 308,000 estimated elk. So overall, those populations are doing pretty well.
Oh yeah, to hit that 300 mark, that's exciting. And then,
it's also important to note, these are numbers based off 2021 data.
Sure.
We won't have our 2022 data until about April, and you can, listeners can tune into that May commission meeting, and there will be a presentation on what those herds' current numbers are. Very
good. What about mule deer? Mule deer is a huge thing for Colorado. I mean, it's one of the big destinations for good mule deer. How are those herds doing? I guess with that 2021 data again.
As if the McCrispy couldn't get any better, Bacon and Ranch just entered the chat. The Bacon Ranch McCrispy, available at participating McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Vote now in Waypoint TV's 2023 Series Showdown. Your favorite hunting and fishing shows are going head-to-head. Visit waypointtv.com to vote and be entered to win a giveaway from Element Outdoors. Cast your votes during each round until the champions are crowned. Get in the game and vote in the Series Showdown. Presented by Expedition Enterprises and Vote Trader. Only at waypointtv.com. Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment.
Yeah, so, not quite as good, I'd say, as the elk, but still, we have 67% of our deer herds are at or above objective. So the majority of them are doing well. Currently, about 400,000 deer in the state. So, overall, doing well, but, there are some concerns, with chronic wasting disease and things. So we have seen a reduction since our 2017 estimate of 418,000. With deer, you also see a higher success rate for hunters as well than you do for elk. And so that does play a role in how many licenses are allocated for hunters as well.
Oh, sure. And I used to live in Silt, outside of Rifle area, Glenwood Springs, if those are too small of towns. But that area is just getting pounded this year with snow. And I know the Grand Mesa pounded with snow. What else are you seeing for snow levels across the mountains? And is there a concern with some of that, with the impact on wildlife? And we just had a snowstorm here yesterday in South Dakota. It's blizzard. It's like 18 degrees today, and it's March 17th. I'm usually out hiking around, enjoying spring weather, and it's cold and snowy still. What are you guys seeing for weather there? And I know that has to do with moisture, and hunters really are always focused on moisture to know what the health of the herd is there.
Yeah, so the northwest region of the state is having a lot of snow, some pretty cold winter up there. All the snow is going to be great for moisture as that snow melts for the area, but it has been something that our biologists in the area are keeping an eye on as far as the elk herds up in that area. They're getting a lot of snowpack, and it's hard for the elk to get down to some of that natural food there. And so we have seen some increases in vehicle collisions as those animals go closer to roads where it's easier to get down to some of that food, using the roads for pathways because they're more clear than some of the snowy areas to travel to. And we have done some baiting operations up in there in the Northwest to try to limit some of the game damage conflicts up there with cattle. And so, we have had to, it's more of a baiting thing to draw them away from roads and away from private properties more than a necessary feeding operation. So, it is something, especially up in the Northwest, that, and we do see changes in fluctuations year over year. Overall, the populations, the elk are gonna survive. But it is, something that our biologists have been focused on this year.
Sure. How about antelope? Because I know antelope are kind of weenies when it comes to tough winters and have to really battle through. Are you seeing any abundance of winter kill with those guys?
So we have had quite a few vehicle collisions with pronghorn up in that Northwest because of, like I mentioned before, them going to the roadways where it's clear and more easy to get down to some food. Also, the salt that's spread on the roads can attract them a little bit as well. So we have seen some relatively large vehicle collisions where 30 plus pronghorn have been taken out by vehicles in those areas when they come down to feed near the roads.
Well, next area is just I wanted to ask about moose. Moose has always been on top of my list of a dream hunt of mine, and since I started in Colorado, I'm just throwing all my eggs in that basket, and someday, hopefully, I draw that. Getting harder and harder as a non-resident now that I'm a non-resident, but I'm hopeful. I'm young-ish, that I've got a lot of years left for that. But there's where was I getting with that? Concern about, I've always thought about the wolves and concern on growing moose population. Colorado has had a really booming moose population, and when you look back to 2005, I'm going to throw out that date. 2005 was some of the first dates on some good solid moose population data that is published on your site. And I used to have kids learn to graph with that data. That was their science practice, to learn how to do some proper graphing. And we just see that number grow and grow and grow. And it was just exciting. And you can see in the harvest data, the antler size bigger and bigger every year. And you guys are opening more units every year. So just having a really good opportunity there is exciting to maybe be lucky enough one day. I think my odds are better there than sheep, 100% better than sheep. And I've already harvested a mountain goat in Colorado, which was a hunt of a lifetime, and I want to do it again. And I think I will be able to. But moose is a tough one. So what are you guys seeing with the moose population growing? And I know that wolf population is in its infancy yet. We're not getting into the whether they should be there or not be there. Don't care about that right now. But just what are you seeing, and what are the biologists' concerns about their population as we see predatory changes?
Yeah, so as you said, the moose populations in Colorado are doing very well. I pulled up those 2005 numbers, about 1,500 back in 2005, and we currently have an estimated 3,500 moose across the state. And so we are, increases in moose licenses have been occurring the past few years. We're currently issuing about 600 moose licenses across the state, and so those opportunities are increasing. And we are seeing those moose spread out and pioneer into new habitats, which is allowing us to add additional units for people to hunt as well. And, as far as the opportunities there, really when everyone tries to go for those big bull moose, so if you look at the application numbers for bulls, that's where everyone tries to go. When you look at cows, your opportunities increase dramatically if you're mostly going out for meat and less so going for the trophy. And you see the same thing with goat and sheep as well. And so the more people that are applying for those, male licenses, the harder it's going to be for folks to draw. But those opportunities have been increasing in recent years. And, as far as wolves being reintroduced into Colorado, wolves do prefer to go after elk. We have much larger elk populations in Colorado for them to prey on. And so, and it's really too early to tell how that's going to affect our population numbers in the state. It's just really hard to predict those future predator-prey dynamics. But it is a factor. It is going to be a factor going forward when we are setting license numbers. Predation has always been a factor, and wolf predation is going to be a factor as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of thinking, that those wolves they might have attacked or not attacked, have focused on that moose. Obviously, elk are going to be a lot more numerous. You can see that in their numbers. But moose generally want to stay a little higher in that deeper snow and would be a little bit more susceptible to predation versus those elk, which would generally want to go lower, get out of typically that deep snow. And I know those big bulls stay high and they'll stay in that deep snow stuff and be just as susceptible. But that's interesting for me to hear that they're still really, really wanting to target those elk for sure. But yeah, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's just too early to tell, and it is possible that select wolf packs focus on a specific food source, and so that is something that we'll have to keep an eye on as we move forward in developing herd management plans and wolf management plans.
Danielle, quick question: what are my better odds, doing the season choice stuff, or just going all in with a archery tag? Is it still, that season choice thing is so awesome. I really like that idea, because everybody wants to, you hear about archery moose being one of those amazing hunts, just a giant animal, super close. That's exciting to me. I would love to go chase one with a bow, but I also don't want it to be impossible for me to draw that tag.
That's hard for me. I don't have the
sure.
draw things pulled up to give you a good recommendation. But I think looking at some of these newer units that Joey was mentioning that we've been opening up, I think those don't tend to get as much interest and applicants. Also, not just for moose, but in general, sometimes those ranching for wildlife properties are also easier to draw, especially for antlerless tags. And I think Joey's spot on. If you really just want to go moose hunting in general, looking at some of those cow moose licenses is really the way to go.
Is there a way to tell if you're just applying for something for no reason? And what I mean by that is I read number 6 on the non-resident license allocations, and it says units with low numbers of available license, which is moose, goat, and sheep, may not have any remaining for non-residents after residents' license are drawn. So I pick a unit and there's, let's just say 5 moose tags. I don't even know if that's a lot, a little, I don't know. Let's just say there's 5 there, and it still would be an 80-20 split, or maybe in the future 75-25 split. Is it maybe saying instead in those units where there's 1 or 2 tags that those non-residents just absolutely aren't going to be drawing that thing most likely? Or when you got 5 to 10, you still probably are going to have that, or you still are going to have that 20% for non-residents? Does that question make any sense?
Yeah, for like sheep, goat, and moose, we have a 90-10 split.
Oh, right, right. Sorry, 90-10. I knew that.
So it gets a little tricky then when you start, subtracting out all the different preferences and then put the allocation rules in. And then even for like our hybrid draws, when we only have like a quota of 5 in a particular unit, there isn't always going to be a general non-resident tag available. And so I believe we do notate those in our brochures so that applicants are aware that there might not be a non-resident allocation for a particular hunt code after we do the landowner preference, after we do the youth preference, etc.
And just looking at those numbers, it'd probably be anything lower with 10 tags. If there's 10 tags, then you can easily get that 10% out of there. But if there's lower than 10, I mean, you don't really have 1 in 10 going to a non-resident. I don't know. I'm just looking at it with my math mind is not strong, but that's what.
No, you're exactly right.
Okay.
So that's why we try to make people aware of that. So
yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know, because I don't want to just be applying for something for the next 20 years and be like, well, there hasn't been a non-resident tag there for 20 years. You're wasting where I could go apply for something else and have a better chance. So all those little tricks and it's not even tricks. It's just understanding the process, understanding the application thing. I thrive. I love that stuff. So, and I know a lot of my listeners do as well. They like diving into this. And one of my listeners, but more so one of my good friends is a science teacher, or was a science teacher, a stats teacher, and man, he uses I'm pretty sure he's using his straight calculus to figure this out, because he's always doing well in the draw.
I would push your listeners to check out the hunting statistics on our website and check out the draw recap reports and population estimates, and you can really dig in and maximize your chances of drawing a license by digging into those numbers and looking at, how many licenses did we issue last year, and how many people applied, and you can really leverage any points you have or try to find hunts that don't require any points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. I was going to mention those too. It really, those reports break down everything from how many landowners drew, how many youth drew, non-residents versus residents. So, and at what point levels. So they are very detailed reports that you can get a lot of good info out of.
Yep, I study those pretty hard. And funny you mentioned this. Just had an interview yesterday with Howl for Wildlife, and me and him chatted for a while exactly on this, that you can find those opportunities. They're there. If you study that, you figure it out, you can have these opportunities. If you keep saying, I haven't drawn a tag for 10 years, well, then you're applying for the wrong thing, and you haven't really figured it out and spent the time to learn it. So, okay, let's move on. It's also coming up on, well, in Colorado, not so much, because there's a shed season of May 1st, west of I-25. But here in South Dakota, there's a lot of there's no season, and folks are shed hunting already for our deer. And elk here shortly, but shed hunting has definitely had some changes over the last few years across the West. We're seeing some regulations go into place that limit to a May 1st or even a closure completely. And Colorado is at one of those that has a May 1st start time, and it's very contentious. I've been out in Unit 10 and some of those other trophy units out doing a little shed hunting on opening day, and I don't know if I'll go back. It was kind of crazy. It was not the nice spring hike I enjoyed. There was a lot of illegal activity. There was a lot of things I saw where guys were going to pick up their stashes, and it was not fun. I just camped and woke up and was like, all right, let's go for our hike. But there was people showing up like it was opening day of third season. It was kind of crazy. What are you guys seeing for some of those impacts on wildlife, and how is this creating a season protected wintering wildlife?
So yeah, just for some, context. So we implemented that shed hunting restrictions back in 2018, and that applies west of I-25 in Colorado on public land. So you're still allowed to shed hunt on private land or on lands that are east of I-25. And that closure is from January 1st to April 30th. And the goal of that closure was to reduce winter disturbances to wildlife, primarily elk, during the important winter months. And so our biologists and officers have seen substantial reductions in those disturbances in big game from shed hunters since we have implemented that closure. And, if you just look at our elk population numbers since that was implemented, you will see an increase in our elk herds since that was implemented. Now, that's a lot of factors going into that increase, but our biologists and officers have reported substantial reductions in those disturbances.
The argument is always just keeping shed hunters out and forgetting about the other recreators. Yeah. What has been in discussion, or what's been, how does CPW handle that argument?
Yeah, so when people are shed hunting during those winter months, you pretty much go out to where those elk or deer are, and basically run them off of their bedding grounds. And during the winter months, it's they're we need to conserve as much energy as possible. There's not as much food, and so for the most part, they're trying to stay put, conserve energy, and shed hunting specifically stresses those animals more than other forms of recreation. You still get snowmobiles out there and other forms of recreation that way, but they're generally not going to where those animals are and pushing them off of those wintering grounds. And so that's where the focus on shed hunting came into play, because just as an inherent part of that recreational activity, you're going to where those animals are and pushing them, stressing them out, burning important calories that they'd otherwise be using to help grow babies in the cow's belly during those months.
Right. And that's a hard thing for me. One of my favorite times of the year is March. I love the hunting season, but I love March and April. We get those green shoots starting to come up on a normal year. I'm looking at drifts of really frozen snow outside right now, blowing snow. So a little odd year, but springtime we've had cabin fever a little bit. It's one of my favorite times to get out and to go explore. And I live right in the middle of national forest here in South Dakota, but I don't have there is a couple of established trails around, but I've never stepped foot on them. I hate established trails. I won't walk on them. It's because I like to go find the wild, the things that are not that not everybody else has seen. I know that there was 10 people walking on this trail earlier today, so it just doesn't. It's not how I connect with nature. So it's just a hard thing for me that's my recreational activity that I love just as much as the snowmobilers and the hikers. But yet I was a science teacher, and in my current position right now, I understand generally wildlife populations and the concern, and I want to make sure that they're there so I can go enjoy them during the season or out of the season. So it's always I don't know how to how to argue either side of there should be one or no, there shouldn't be one. So if you got any advice on how to have that battle in my head of support or not support, let me know, because it's a tricky one.
Yeah, and completely understand. That is a fun recreational activity, a good time to get out there, but the wildlife resource is valuable as well, and trying to protect and conserve that wildlife resources is a major goal of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to make sure that that resource is here for future generations to enjoy as well. And so there has to be that balance, and maybe a bit of sacrifice for some recreational activities to make sure that that resource is still here.
Right. And I don't know if you pay attention to that, but the memes and stories of the Utah shed hunters not getting their YouTube content is hilarious. So, not being able to get their content. I could care less really what I put on YouTube and Instagram. I don't really care. I just like having a podcast to share information and help other outdoorsmen out. But yeah, it's a touchy subject, and just discussing it, I'm sure will get a few people's blood boiling. But it is what it is, and if we want that resource to be there, and I understand using the word sacrifice there probably is the correct word, a sacrifice. But I will still throw my 1-year-old on my back at some point, and we'll get out during that. Well, here, anytime, and I head to Colorado. Their birthdays are both April 30th and March 16th, so I told them both the other day, hey, birthday parties are going to happen in Colorado on May 1st, I think, in the future, just to go enjoy some spring hiking. So, and that almost wraps up does wrap up my questions for you guys. Do you have any other thoughts and things, resources for listeners, ways to follow? I just shared a CPW resource yesterday with a coworker on some really cool the fishing app that you had. You got to have a lot of really good resources on various things. So any thoughts on that?
I think you kind of mentioned it in the beginning, but big game applications are being accepted right now. I always encourage people to try to get those applications in as soon as possible, as early as possible. The deadline is April 4th, but if you wait until April 4th, our staff gets increasingly busy during that month of April. It becomes harder and harder for us to help you in the best ways possible. So get started early, get those applications in as soon as possible. That way, if you do have any questions or issues, our staff will be better equipped to help you through that process.
Well, awesome. I guess last thing, Daniel and Joey, what's your favorite? What's your niche? What gets you going? This is kind of a backwards thing to do. I normally do it in an interview or an introduction. But are you hunters, fishermen, campers? What are you looking forward to either this spring or fall?
You want to go, Dan?
Go ahead, Joey.
So I grew up mostly camping and fishing. So it was big into fishing, was always fishing. And every time we'd go camping, I would be gone all day long, running around the lake, trying to find a good spot to fish. I'm getting more and more into hunting. I spent 5 years helping people apply for the draw and understand our hunting regulations, and got my first deer this past year, which was a great experience. 7.5 mile hike through the mountains at about 5 degrees. So overall, just a great experience. I really enjoyed it, and just love everything that Colorado has to offer.
It couldn't help but spark a little interest seeing all these hunters apply for stuff. So that's really, really, really awesome. Congratulations on that. Sounds like I can hear it in your voice that was a rewarding experience and you enjoyed it. So Danielle?
So I'm also a lifelong angler and grew up with a dad and a grandpa who were hunters. So I was kind of always around hunting, and I've been out hunting a few times, but I wouldn't label myself as a hunter. And then I have 2 kind of younger kids, and we love exploring the outdoors and hiking and visiting all of our state parks. I haven't taken them tent camping yet, but I'm looking forward to that hopefully here soon.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you again for putting this interview together and scheduling and doing some research to look up my answers. I love Colorado. I love South Dakota. I love being back here. I don't think I'll be moving back to Colorado at any point, but I will be visiting Colorado a lot every year, every other year to do some hunting. So I look forward to many more years of recreating in Colorado. It's a great state, and enjoy watching what you guys do in CPW. So thanks for being that voice and getting the info out to people. This will go out to lots and lots of Coloradans as well as Colorado hunters.
Thanks so much, Clint. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys, and I'll let you get back to your day. And just stick around here for just a sec, as after I hit stop on the record button. So thanks again.
To the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country.
Do you like to listen to hunting and fishing stories and tips? Well, if you do, I have an app for you. Hey everybody, Outdoors Dan here from the Outdoor Call Radio app and Respect the Game TV. Like to invite you to download our 24/7 live Outdoor Call Radio network on your device's app store. The Outdoor Call Radio app airs shows talking about the outdoors free 24 hours a day. I host a couple live shows every Wednesday that you can join in on. So if you like to listen to shows about hunting and fishing and maybe win some great gear along the way, download the Outdoor Call Radio app and take it wherever you go.